Hi, I'm Jacob with AltaPoint Data Systems, the makers of the AltaPoint and HealthBiller practice management softwares. In today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about what to do after you've contacted AltaPoint about signing up initially for the E-Prescribe. That includes accessing your new E-Prescribe, setting up the options and the alerts the way that you need for your practice to help you save time when you're actually working with patients. So let's get started. There's a few ways to access the E-Prescribe through AltaPoint. The first is just through the patient file. So we'll go in here and click our patient. And on page 1, you'll notice of this patient file, we've got the E-Prescribe button down below. If you use the EMR or medical records part of AltaPoint, you can also come to Visits, down to the Medications button, and with the online entry and refill box checked, you can go down to New. Also in the EMR, we can go to the check-in list, Medications after choosing the patient that we want, and again with the online entry and refills box checked, click on New. Accessing the E-Prescribe through HealthBiller is fairly similar to the way that we access it through AltaPoint. So we'll come up to find our patient list, select the patient we want, and then on this first patient tab, you'll see the E-Prescribe button down on the bottom. Also, we have the chart tab, medications sub-tab, and the E-Prescribe button down below. This is the main medication screen, which is the screen that opens when the E-Prescribe is accessed. I want to briefly point out the prescriber and location information section. This information comes from the practice management software, so it shouldn't need to be changed, and the prescriber can't be changed. However, if the prescriber needs supervision, this supervisor icon can be clicked, and the supervisor can be selected from this pull-down menu. If the supervisor isn't found on this list, it means that they haven't accessed the E-Prescribe yet. The first time a prescriber accesses the E-Prescribe, they're going to need to go through an ID proofing process. This will be covered in another video, so we're going to go ahead and skip that for now. Let's take a quick look at some of the options for a practice as well as some individual prescribers that are available. We're going to go ahead and click on this Show Menu button, come down to Setup and Tools, and choose Practice Setup. The first thing you'll notice is this contact information screen. This isn't required, but it's nice to have in there if you'd like to enter that. More important information comes under the prescribing locations as well as the prescribers and staff. The nice thing about that is that the information comes directly over from your practice management system, whether that's AltaPoint or HealthBiller. So it's not really something that you need to worry about, let alone are even able to change. However, there are a couple of things I want to point out. On the prescriber screen, you have an emergency access button. When checked, they can use a code that will give them more PHI access than they would have outside of an emergency situation. There's also this No Admin checkbox, which will take away administration functions from these particular prescribers. Under Staff, you have a similar emergency access checkbox with the prescribers that you want to be able to have the access under. The Settings tab gives us the place to enter the emergency access authorization code. Blank, it will not allow for an emergency access to the PHI. Here you can enter how long you want the E-Prescribe to be able to sit idle without logging out. Now, a longer time will give you more time to do other things if you need to, but a shorter time can also prevent unauthorized access. Clicking on the Auto Update Meds Historical and Expired checkbox will change a current medication to the status of historical once the day's supply is up, so you won't need to worry about changing that manually. By clicking on the Force Two-Factor Authentication Signature checkbox, you can force a second-factor authentication signature on all prescriptions, not just controlled substances. At the time of recording, this is required in Ohio, and it's marked automatically for those whose practice locations are located in Ohio. But this is an option that's available for anyone who wants that second way of authenticating prescriptions being sent. So now let's look at the logged in provider specific options. Come over here to our show menu. We'll come to My Settings. You can look at the services that you've signed up for. Now, if you don't want to have refill requests coming from pharmacies for some reason, or if you've signed up for the controlled substances and don't want that, you can uncheck those here, as well as a couple of other places that will be shown in another video. And then under My Preferences and Defaults, we've got this pending summary box. So if you wanted to see the prescriptions that are only there for you as a prescriber, the pending or approved, or just the pending, or just the approved, or if you want to see those options for the location as a whole, you can select that here. You can choose how to sort that or what's hidden. And those, I should mention, are under this pending RX, where you can see the various things that are still pending. So for the prescription writer, we can remember the last used prescriptions if we want in the drug search, or we can default it to a favorites list or a drug class, something like that. If you have a default dispense number, refill number, or wanted to set a prescription to auto expire or auto renew by default, you can choose those options here. Most of the other settings we won't really worry about, as practice management softwares interacting with the E-Prescribe don't have a lot of those information in the E-Prescribe charts. Email notifications can come in handy. It's a good way to find out if there's a pending prescription that's still waiting, but particularly I would think for the refill requests received. So if you want an email when a pharmacy sends a refill request, this is a great option to make sure that you know that those are there, rather than having to come in and checking to see under this pharmacy refill request if there is something there. You can also change the theme, the look of this, as well as changing a condition link if you really want to. The interaction alerts monitoring section, you can see whether the drug interaction check and the drug allergy checks are on or off. But this is actually set in another area here in the options. So let's go to the Show menu, come down to the Alert Setup under the Setup and Tools. You can set all users to see all, medium and high, or high only, or you can do that on an individual basis. And that's an option for drug allergies, drug allergy interactions, duplicate therapy, any of those options that you want to set. You can also turn those alerts off, but I would not recommend that, as this is a safety issue for your patients. Under custom alerts, if there's something that you need a custom alert for, you can also fill that in here. And for any changes made on these screens, don't forget to save or save and close. Now let's look at our favorite list setup. We'll come into the Show menu options under Setup and Tools and Favorite List Setup. So you can save things to your favorites list while you're writing the prescriptions. But if you wanted to set something up beforehand that you use frequently, this is a great way to do it. You can set up favorites by prescriber individually or practice-wide so that all prescribers can see those. If I click on New Favorites, it gives me the option to fill out the information for that favorite, as well as making a favorite inactive or historical, or deleting that from our favorites list if something has changed in the way you're writing prescriptions. You can also save favorite directions to be printed out on the patient's prescription labels. If you want to run a report about the e-prescriptions that you've sent or received from a pharmacy, you can go to the Show menu option, come down to the Setup and Tools, and there's a few different reports here that you can use. The E-Prescribe Status Report, RX Listing Report, and the Audit Log Report are probably going to be your most useful. Alerts about things that need to be checked, such as e-Prescribe usage or messages from the pharmacy, can be found by coming to our Show menu and then under this Alerts and Messages. If there is an alert or message, you'll see that quickly by the number by the side. Here's an example of what receiving an alert could look like. This particular alert notifies of a controlled substance prescription incident, which would need to be reviewed by an EPCS Access Control Manager. Clicking on the specific message opens the audit log report for a review. If there were a problem, it would need to be reported within 1 business day. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope it was helpful for you to see what kind of options and alerts are available for you in your practice. In our next E-Prescribe video, we'll be talking about the patient details. So how to add information on patient allergies, patient pharmacy choices, or insurance eligibilities. See you then.